Hello there everybody, welcome back to my channel. My name is Joesephyr and welcome to another Should You Pull video for Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. In today's video we're going to be discussing a character that's definitely had her time in the spotlight, to say the least. But whether she continues to maintain that spotlight or not with the coming of her new LD comes into question a little bit. Of course, I'm going to be talking about Aranea and her banner and her event that's going to be coming out for the first time to Dissidia Final Fantasy Opera Omnia. Obviously, we had her actually over a year ago now in the form of the global first version, but now she's coming out for as if she would have done in the Japanese version. So, if you're interested in learning more about Aranea's kit, her LD, and the event that comes along with her, then as always, stay tuned and keep on watching. Before we get started, don't forget to check out all of my social links in the description box below, including Twitter, Twitch, Discord, and Patreon. On Twitch, you can find me streaming Final Fantasy XIV twice a week now. My Final Fantasy count up, we're just about to hit Final Fantasy IV every Friday night, and of course, every Opera Omnia event as and when it happens in the mornings, well, UK mornings anyway. And obviously on Patreon, I shout out one of my patrons every time I release a video, and today that person is going to be Biridan, who is brand new to my Patreon, so a massive thank you goes out to you, and a massive fan of Cyan, as you can see by their title card. So if you guys are interested in perhaps getting a title card made for yourselves by myself personally, as well as other benefits such as being able to join in with the Would You Pull sections of the videos, and even voice chats that we all have amongst ourselves, then perhaps consider joining up on Patreon as well as supporting the channel further. And don't forget, of course, to check out all of the other resources I have available for you within Opera Omnia that loads of fantastic content creators have made for you, and definitely go and support them. And of course, all of the other YouTubers and various other content creators I have just in the list below as well. So first things first, as always, let's take a quick look at the banner and Aranea, of course, and exactly what her LD is going to bring along. Now, the last time we saw Aranea, she was considered broken, to put it in certain simple terms. She was extremely powerful when she was released early for the global version due to her ability to delay, re-break, deal large amounts of damage. She just does so many things by herself as a damage dealer that she was considered really quite overpowered. And if you've not used Aranea before, a lot of her stuff still kind of sticks to that, because she doesn't have a rework of sorts. She gets a little bit of rework through her LD, but if you haven't used it before, basically she revolves entirely around one of her buffs that she gets from either her skill 2 or her EX, which is Overclock. And Overclock basically turns her skills into plus versions of themselves, which realistically are what you want to be using all of the time. So Dragoon Dive is just a Brave HP attack without that buff, but with Overclock on top of it, you then get Dragoon Dive Plus, which delays the enemy by 2 turns. It does a single target range Brave HP, single HP dump. That's what that does. Now, High Wind does a re-break when enemies are already broken, so that when when you attack with them, you get a break regardless of whether they're hitting or not. And this is the thing that you really want from Aranea, because not only that, you're also going to get a debuff off of this called Vital Crusher. Now, Vital Crusher is probably the most valuable thing that Aranea has at this point in time, because it makes all bravery attacks crit damage and it increases crit damage by 50%. So a straight 50% extra bravery damage is not something to be sniffed at. And basically, you need to have Overclock on in order to get the plus version of this, so that you get extra splash damage on the enemies as well. So you get 80% splash damage, so it's going to hit really quite hard while you're doing that. And you get Overclock from this if you're using the regular version of High Wind, not the plus version, if you break something with it. So until now, it was usually the opening move for Aranea to make sure she had the Overclock buff. You also got a really powerful Brave HP attack out of it, from her EX Plus, where you'd get Boost Lance if you had Overclock on, which was just a typical bravery attack that hit pretty hard. And then you got High Boost Lance Plus instead of her HP Plus, which gave her it's still a very good Brave HP attack, because it's AoE Bravery, single target HP with 50% splash damage as long as the target you're attacking is broken, which that's still pretty good for this point in time. At the time, it was absolutely catastrophic, but right now, it's just good. As for the EX itself, Air Superiority gives you overclock if you hit things, if you break something with it. You still get a plus version of it if you've already got overclock, and this is the way that you extend the overclock buff as well. So she actually benefits quite nicely from any buff extenders like Hope or Saz, etc. You can benefit from it quite nicely. And high speed maneuver is the other thing that you get from this, which is basically the same as what lightning has. If you break an enemy, you get a free turn after it that doesn't increase your turn count or any of that stuff. So it works so she's breaking things over and over and over again and doing very similar things to lightning, but with a more AoE focused kit. So if you've not used that before, that's pretty much what Aranea does. Now her LD adds a new buff to her, like a special effect called Magitech Spear. It, after you've put all of your, like the LD boards and everything into it, it becomes a 6-hit Brave HP attack that's inflicted twice, and you get HP bravery refund after the first hit, so the next one hits harder. You get overclock from this, whether you break an enemy or not. You get 4 turns of overclock from this, and you also get Magitech Spear. Now Magitech Spear basically makes it so that everything that Aranea does re-breaks the enemy, like unbreaks the enemy before you actually do the attack, and that's really powerful. And also, it says here raises attack by 20% and cancels the target's break status. You do actually, after the LD boards, get 60% initial bravery, which combines well with one of her other buffs, which is the one she gets from using Dragoon Dive, which gives her the ability to have brave regen, which will help her quite a lot through a lot of these free turns. Now the other thing that's nice that you get from this is you get a new Brave Plus and HP Plus that is there for when you don't have Overclock. Because the problem that Aranea always had is that Overclock was a finite resource. Like, you'd only get it from your skills or your EX. So the fact that you can get it from this new Brave Plus or HP Plus, it's not as good as the overclocked versions. So boost lance, high boost lance, etc. But a 2-hit Brave HP attack that grants overclock when you're breaking a target, which if you've got Magitech Spear up, will break the target as long as they're already broken, means you have a more regular source of getting overclock so that you can always be using the plus versions of her skills. Because realistically, you don't want to be using the regular versions of the skills instead of the plus ones, because the damage difference is quite significant. Now, Aranea only has single HP dumps in all of her attacks. Like, her EX is 100% AoE damage, High Wind is 80% AoE damage, her HP High Boost Lance Plus is AoE splash damage, but she doesn't have multiple HP dumps in anything but her LD. So if you're expecting the sort of damage scaling of, say, Lightning or anything like that, then you may come away a bit disappointed. But she's there to do the AoE break thing over the course of like multiple enemies and trying to take out multiple enemies at once. So she's still very good at what she does. And the fact that she gets this re-break on every attack sounds really amazing. And in a lot of situations, it is that good, especially because you're getting free turns after it, which you're then re-breaking them again. Like, obviously it doesn't chain because you never get free turns after free turns, but you're getting multiple re-breaks every turn. The problem with this is the Lufenia mechanic. There are a lot of times where Lufenia orbs need the enemy to take a turn. And if that's the case, you're not going to want to bring Aranea to it, because she doesn't have a way of not breaking the enemy. As long as she's got this LD buff up, the Magitech Spear, she doesn't have a way of not breaking the enemy, and therefore it can be a real problem if you're trying to make sure that they get their turn so that the Lufenia orb doesn't tick down too quickly. But, you know, that being said, there are a lot of other situations where it's really good. Like, if the enemy wants, if it's a freeze-based Lufenia orb, fantastic, break away, do what you need to do. It's elemental damage, fantastic, bring an Imperil Enchanter, bring Aranea, you're going to hit really hard. There's a lot of situations where Aranea is very useful, but there are also a lot of ones where she's not, and because she is just a straight damage dealer, the only thing she really provides to the party as a whole is the Vital Crusher debuff, which is very powerful. Even now, it's still really good. Like, I mean, 50% bravery damage is great on anybody, ask Jack. But that's the only thing she really provides, as on top of the delay and the re-break. So perhaps that might be a reason for you to question whether you want her or not. If you don't have Lightning, or you don't plan on grabbing Garland later, although a lot of people are planning on grabbing Garland later, then Aranea is a great pick for you for fulfilling that role. But if you already have Lightning or characters like her, she's not nearly as necessary. Call abilities wise, Aranea is not bad. Like, her regular call is actually the nicer one, if you ask me, because it provides the Vital Crusher debuff. The big thing with Vital Crusher, though, is that with Aranea in your party, she can reapply it quite a lot, but the buff doesn't last very long. So the fact that you get it from Highwind, the fact that I forgot to mention as well, with the LD you do get a free skill use after you've used it as well. So you can use that to maintain whatever buff needs to be there or anything like that. So you can get away with doing that. But the actual buff that you get from Highwind, or the debuff you get from Highwind, is Vital Crusher, so you can use that to your advantage. But you're only going to get it for 2 turns. So that's the only thing. And it is a rebreak as well. You still get the rebreak off of it. So that's a nice thing as well. But with Vermilion Assault, it's just damage. Like, you're not going to get Magitech Spear. You're not going to... I mean, obviously Overclock isn't useful for anyone but Aranea, so you're not going to get that. It's just damage. The real thing you want from Aranea is her Highwind attack because of Vital Crusher, because of the rebreak, things like that. It's not bad, but I think that there is better out there. I should also note the fact that her C65 is another method of enabling Overclock, but it's probably not the first thing you're going to use, like following the free skill that you get from her LD, because, well, it gives you Overclock anyway, so you're not going to set it back to Overclock for no reason. You'd rather use it on a skill that you can then charge the EX and extend the Overclock with. Now, her high armor is Attack Keystone. Now, if you're going to use Aranea, I would pick this up. Because she doesn't have multiple HP dumps and she hits really hard, you're going to find that your bravery leaks quite a lot with Aranea, and that's a problem that she has. But if you give her Attack Keystoned armor, it's going to help that, because you're going to get an extra 15% like brave damage limit and HP damage limit as well. So it's going to make it less of a problem. Like, she still has that problem by not having loads and loads of HP dumps in her attacks, like, say, Lightning with Crushing Blow and Army of One, or Garland with his EX later on down the line, or even Terra. Like, there's a lot of characters that do what Aranea does, but she's still very good at it. And then lastly, in terms of artifacts, attack, obviously, and then she has a buff that boosts all of her stats, all of her offensive stats, and her defense while Overclock is active. And if you're playing Aranea, Overclock should always be active, so that's where you'd want to go with that. Okay, so now let's take a look at the event that's coming along with Aranea. Now, this is being treated like a brand new event, just like any other brand new character. Obviously, the caveat of that is that we've actually already had Aranea once before, because she was a global first character. So there's not going to be as many resources to grab from this, purely on the back of the fact that we don't have a brand new character to grab summon boards from. But that being said, let's take a look at the Lufenia. Now, this time around, we're going to be fighting the Superior Knights. Now, we've fought these guys before with Aranea's event, and the main shtick that they have is that they put up shields that mean they can't be broken until after they've taken critical damage. And critical damage is the name of the game here in general, because the Lufenia orb requires that the enemy takes critical bravery damage. It's a very, very wide thing to have as a Lufenia requirement, because there's a lot of ways you can deal critical damage frequently. And it definitely doesn't necessarily require Aranea, though Vital Crusher is what the game is expecting you to have for this particular fight. The enemies resist, they absorb all elements except for thunder. You can see where this is going already. So, like, Lightning, for obvious reasons, is going to be really, really useful here as a damage dealer, because not only does she have the one element that they don't absorb, but she also has delay in her kit, which is very, very handy, and also a part of what Aranea does. Now, you can, when they put up shields, so they put these shields up after certain sort of HP thresholds, which mean that they become immune to break, and they also take significantly less bravery damage, like while they have the shield up. And the way to get rid of it is to deal critical damage to them. So not only are you dealing with the orb, you're also dealing with the mechanic at the same time. This means that, honestly, you can take anyone that has critical in their kit. So like Cloud, Kais has like party-wide critical damage as part of his Selkie Soul buff. Saz guarantees critical hits. There's a lot, like, you can instant break the enemy if you want to just get rid of the shield there and then. So it's like using Ramza or Gabranth. Gabranth is actually fabulous for this event because of the fact that he does so many defensive things at the same time as countering a lot of their mechanics and making sure you can deal critical damage, because critical damage is guaranteed when the enemy is broken anyway. And for the same reason, you can take Ramza because Shout will do exactly the same thing. Honestly, with this event, I'm looking forward to having a reason to use the Gabranth. It took me ages to pull for because I love him and I really, really want a reason to use him. Emperor, similarly, will do very, very well here on the back of having delay on his kit and a large amount of damage potential while the enemy doesn't have the Brave Reduction aura up. Honestly, these enemies aren't as superior as they used to be. Like, I remember when Aranea first came out, it was actually very difficult if you didn't have access to Aranea. But this time around, she's really, really not that necessary, as long as you keep yourself safe. So, like, Aerith, if you've got Aerith, she's going to do really, really well here. If you've got, like, ways of avoiding damage altogether, if you, like, so tanks, that kind of thing. Celes, oh, well, no, not Celes, because they absorb ice. Like, Gladio, for example, something like that. Rude is really good here as well. I've seen plenty of clears with Rude. Honestly, as long as you're keeping yourself safe and making sure you have critical damage somewhere in your party, it's honestly just a case of playing well, and from that point on, it should be easy street. So now we come to the big question, of course. Should you be pulling on Aranea's banner? And I didn't actually mention this earlier, but Aranea's banner comes with Prompto and Rem's EXs, and obviously Emperor's Burst. Now, didn't mention those for a reason. Prompto and Rem are not characters that you're likely to be pulling for any reason other than perhaps the Chaos Challenge. But that being said, with Aranea herself, she's a really cool character to have. Like, she's not bad. Like, she's definitely not bad, because I think that because when she came out the last time around, she was considered broken, overpowered, people have high expectations for Aranea. And if you're expecting that from her, you are going to be disappointed, because she's just good now. Like, she's just good. She's not broken. And she fulfills a role that other characters have already filled. Now, I would say that if you already have Lightning and her full kit, her burst, etc., you have pretty much no reason to be pulling for Aranea. Like, apart from wanting her, or wanting to have another opportunity to get Emperor's Burst, which is realistically the reason that I'm probably going to throw a few tickets at this banner. Though I would probably prefer to have, because I still don't have Eldnash's LD, I prefer to go after him a bit harder than I would Aranea, on the back of the fact that Eldnash has more synergy events coming up when his burst comes out. So I'd rather have Eldnash LD than Aranea. But if I were to get her in the free pull or easily, I'd be really happy about it and I would use her, because she's still a good damage dealer. She's still good, like, for the events that she is good in. Like, delay and rebreak is still a strong mechanic as long as the Lufenia orbs allow for it. So if you're able to just delay something to Hecken back, then take Aranea and Emperor, or Aranea and Lightning. You can have them both together as long as you've got a really solid third support character to go along with them. Vital Crusher's still amazing. It's still a great debuff, and if you're delaying and rebreaking, no, it doesn't last for very long, but it shouldn't need to if they're not getting any turns. And if you enjoyed using her before, she hasn't changed much. She still does a lot of what she does. So that can work either to or against her if in terms of whether you want to pull for her or not, because she hasn't changed all that much. She's just streamlined her kit, and her LD buff does a lot more of what she already does by giving her rebreak on every attack she does. Now, rebreak is a very powerful thing as long as you're in a mission that gives you pause to be able to do it. Now, short of that debuff, sadly, Aranea doesn't do a lot for your party. She is a damage dealer. And because of that, there's a lot of damage dealers out there, even ones that do pretty much exactly the same things that Aranea does, with or without Vital Crusher. Like Lightning, I've used Lightning as an example already. If you have Lightning already, you have pretty much no reason to be pulling for her. And similarly, even if you don't have Lightning, you could use like Aranea as like a stopgap between now and Garland if you wanted to, because Garland has a lot of delay in his kit, and when his burst comes out, his damage is going to far eclipse that of Aranea's. But even characters like Terra, like, damage dealers are a dime a dozen. So realistically, it's just a case of picking which ones you like most. And sadly, Aranea not having a burst does kind of leave her out of a lot of team compositions, because if you've got a burst for a character that's a damage dealer, the chances are you're probably going to take them over her. But she's good, like, she's fine, she's just not alone on the top of the pedestal anymore. And then finally, it's time for Would You Pull, the section of the video where, of course, you, the viewer, get your chance to make your voice heard and let everyone know whether you would or wouldn't pull on any given banner in the game and why. Now, this one's a little bit more torn than I expected it to be. I would have thought that a lot more people were skipping this than originally planned. However, it turns out that there is actually quite a few people that are still very interested in Aranea. Now, to go into numbers, of course, 9% of people said they were going to use gems on this banner, which I'm actually very surprised at. 45% of people said 100 or more tickets, 30% of people said less than 100 tickets, and 16% of people said no. I'm actually quite surprised by this, and I wonder how much of this comes down to people who still want Emperor's Burst, because I'm going to throw some tickets at this, because I still don't have Emperor's Burst and I still want it and would rather keep hold of my Burst tokens if I can help it. But I'd honestly rather have Eldnash than Aranea for their future-proofing sake, whereas it would seem a lot of people disagree with me, which is absolutely fine. To go into some of the comments, Spickle here says, I've chosen 100 or less tickets. I have her kit from the Global First even, so it would be nice to get the LD, but I don't feel like I need her. So I won't be going all in and will instead be focusing more on the upcoming Y'shtola and Trey, which I think is fine. I think Y'shtola is another character that people are going to be pulling for future-proofing sake, and Trey's actually a character I'm very interested in as well. And eventually we've got to find some banners that we can skip out on in order to save for others, right? Aurelius says, not pulling for the simple fact that even though it's been a while, I'm still tired of seeing Aranea. This comment made me laugh, because when Aranea came out, she was everywhere for months, and loads of people just got sick of it. I loved it, if I'm honest, but that's because I like any character that can give me an easy time. But honestly, I think a lot of people share this sentiment and just don't talk about it, so to see this comment just made me laugh. Kobalzog says, I think people are skipping Aranea because she isn't the absolute powerhouse she was in her original release. But she's not overpowered doesn't equal not good. 100% agree. I personally prefer characters not being too dominant as they become kind of a crutch. Like many characters, she can't be brought to everything, which is a good thing, and you need to be careful with her rebreaks. But Vital Crusher is still really strong, her turn manipulation is very effective, but not all powerful. And I like her animations. Now, I agreed with everything on this comment until I like her animations. Because one thing that I will criticise Aranea on is, apart from her LD is actually very pretty. But High Wind and Air Superiority are literally the same move. And I don't know if that bothers other people, but it really bothers me. And it just, like, in terms of animations, I'm like, really? It's the same move from a different camera angle, but, you know, whatever. Anyways, and finally, Winged Paragon says, it's difficult to say. For Aranea, I only want to throw tickets out, but I still don't have Emperor's Burst and have managed to get all the other LDs from the banners this burst has been on. Maybe for that reason alone, I may go with gems. I'll throw some tickets first, see how it goes before making that decision. I am very much in the same camp as this. I really want Emperor's Burst, and I don't have to spend burst tokens, because I've already spent some recently. I don't want to have to, but I probably will if I do. So honestly, I would rather save my gems than the burst tokens, because there's no sign of Emperor returning anytime soon. He's a character that I know I want to use a lot, even if I don't use him a lot, it's a character I just want to have the full kit for. And I think that Winged Paragon has the same sort of mentality I do from when we've messaged each other in the past. So I would personally go with tickets and then just sit and think about it, because the banner will still be live for 2 weeks after. So if you wanted to, per se, pull for Y'shtola, and then if you got her burst, then maybe you could come back to it, or there's reasons why you could go into that. Anyways, so that's going to be all from Would You Pull. Thank you massively to all of my patrons who casted their votes and their comments as always, and hopefully that'll give you a bit more guidance in the audience for those of you who would do or don't want to pull on Aranea for opinions that just aren't my own. So that's going to be all for today's video on Aranea. Let me know in the comments below what you think of Aranea, any changes that they've made to the LD, of course, and whether you're still pulling for Emperor Burst like me. I want it so bad. Don't forget to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and click that bell for notifications of any future videos I might be making. And I will see you hopefully on stream on Thursday, or my Thursday, for Aranea, to hopefully try and get something, because honestly at this point I just want to win, game. Like, I know I have a lot of resources, but do you really need to make me plummet them this quick? I really hope that I could do with something nice happening within the game. But anyways, that's going to be it from me, and thank you all very much for watching, and I will see you in the next one. Thanks ever so much again, and I'll see you then. Bye!